to try to... Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then we're available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire Television, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Tuesday, April 4, 2023, and we are literally live and out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Well, I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian, trans, students and youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, political advocacy, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television, news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor DJ Nena, resident DJ for Lit Bar on Wilton Drive, Wilton Manors, and a military veteran from New Jersey. DJ Nena has a BM in Commercial Music Technology and an MA in English Creative Writing, which all means you're smart.
Yes.
She has been a local DJ and music producer for the LGBTQ plus community of South Florida for more than 20 years. Good evening, DJ Nena.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. Let's welcome our anchor, Jeff Oliverio. Jeff is a founder and treasurer of the Hollywood LGBTQ plus Council and My Hollywood Pride, which is scheduled to return in January of 2024. Jeff is returning as co-chair for the upcoming 2023 National LGBTQ Task Force Gala in October. The task force events, including Winter Party Festival, have given back more than $3.3 million to LGBTQ community organizations in South Florida. Welcome, Jeff.
I'm happy to be here. It's April 4th, so I want to wish my brother a very happy birthday today. And also remind everybody there's a lot of things that are happening in history today, so just stay tuned.
Beyond your brother's birthday.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Let's welcome anchor Rajee Narinesingh, a famous transgender activist, actress, author, mystic, and reality TV personality. She is of multiracial descent, and she has appeared on more than 35 television shows across the globe. Welcome, Rajee.
Oh, it's great to be back. And I have a birthday this week. I'm turning 25.
All right.
Aries.
You can rent a car.
Oh, my God. I wish.
You know,
but anyway.
You're in a church campus, right?
Yeah, right. That lightning's going to strike me down. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. Let's welcome anchor Ryan Hurst. Ryan is the senior major gift and events officer for the National LGBTQ Task Force. He has worked in social justice for over 10 years with organizations like Lambda Legal, Defense and Education Fund, and People for the American Way Foundation. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much. And I did not get indicted in New York today. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines for the LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America. Our community is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points for the queer news for today, Tuesday, April 4th, 2023.
Well, let's begin with queering up the worldview. After visit by Vice President Harris, Ghana softens its newer anti-LGBTQ plus bill.
I have raised this issue, and let me be clear about where we stand. First of all, for the American press who are here, you know that a great deal of work in my career has been to address human rights issues, equality issues across the board, including as it relates to the LGBT community. And I feel very strongly about the importance of supporting the freedom and supporting and fighting for equality among all people, and that all people be treated equally. I will also say that this is an issue that we consider, and I consider, to be a human rights issue, and that will not change.
Well, Ghana's President, Nana Akufo-Addo, has said that the substantial elements of a draconian anti-LGBTQ plus bill being considered by Ghana's parliament have been modified after intervention by his government. He made the announcement Monday during a joint press event with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. He pointed out that the proposed legislation, framed in the guise of family values, which seeks to introduce some of the harshest anti-LGBTQ plus laws on the entire African continent, was not legislation introduced by his government, but private members' bill. The bill was first introduced in Parliament in August of 2021. The Ghana president said, quote, "The bill is going through the Parliament. The Attorney General has found it necessary to speak to the committee, the Constitutional and Legal Committee of Parliament, about it regarding the constitutionality of several of the provisions. The Parliament is dealing with it. At the end of the process, I will come in. My understanding is that substantial elements of the bill have already been modified as a result of the intervention of the Attorney General," end quote. Well, good news. Now, let's not cheer for Ghana yet, and we're not going to cheer for Ghana when it's done. But Ghana introduced, in fact, at the end of the show, we're going to last night we heard from Stuart Milk at Diversity Honors as he was talking about what was going on in Ghana, and you could be put to death for being homosexual in Ghana, which is really the focus of what this bill was all about. So we're glad that there is progress. That's what the president is telling us. My other observation is, wow, this is exactly what we want from our government in the United States.
Right.
This is a vice president that is Californian, was a prosecutor in San Francisco, and has stood up for LGBTQ plus rights her entire life. And when she runs for president unsuccessfully, becomes the vice presidential partner of Canada and becomes vice president of the United States, this is how historical, history-long, lifelong support of LGBTQ works out, not in this instance for Americans, but for people in Ghana. And this is a representation of why this White House is so important to our LGBTQ community.
You know, this is a good example of American diplomacy. American diplomacy can look at like a bunch of different things. We can use the power of our might, we can use the power of our money, and we can use the power of our morality. This is an opportunity for Americans to look inward and say, what is our morality going to be? Who are we going to be as a country? Do we want to be a leader on human rights, or do we want to be a country that oppresses human rights?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the arc of history, again, bringing it back to what today is, it's also the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and we have an African-American vice president speaking in an African continent on behalf of the United States.
Yeah.
So it really shows the arc of what our history is, but it also does just remind us that our own LGBTQ plus community is under attack as well, which is very reminiscent of the civil rights movement of the 60s, of coming after and that kind of pushback when there was some progress that was being made. So, you know, we have to kind of just put everything in perspective of where we stand. Yes, our rights are always being attacked, but we're in such a better place than most of the world in many cases.
Well, I know for me, you know, as a trans woman maneuvering through society today, in 2023 can sometimes feel very challenging. So I think about those Ghanaian LGBTQ plus people that are relieved. You know, can you imagine being LGBTQ plus in Ghana and this law was going to be passed? What would you do? Where would you go? I mean, I often think about LGBTQ people across the world and whatever they're facing. There was another African country, and I can't remember. Angola. And they had horrific LGBT laws until the human rights, International Human Rights Organization were pleading with them because I think there were a few people that were put to death for being, you know, LGBTQ. So I'm so happy. Thank God she was able to go over and give the message.
Start the conversation.
Yeah.
The governor, I mean, the president is really very specific with going, well, we were doing it anyway, and we're considering it, and we're working on the language. And, that's all initiated. You know, one last thought that I want to make. I want to take a swipe, and so I'm going to take a swipe. The consequences of our elections matter. And in this instance, it doesn't matter to a single person sitting at this table or a single person in South Florida. What matters here is that people got out and voted, and Joe Biden became president of the United States. And he made a commitment to the LGBTQ community, and over the last 2 years has lived up to that commitment in every single way.
Yeah.
Proof of that point. Could you imagine if it was President Ron DeSantis? Would the vice president be in Ghana saying, we think it is repugnant that you are going to execute gay men and lesbian women?
Heck no.
It's impossible to come to that conclusion.
It would never happen.
It never happened. No. This is the consequence, tangible consequence of our elections. And it doesn't even affect us. But we still stand up for the values of what that election meant.
That's right.
Next, let's queer up politics. New York Governor Hochul disinvited from prides after budget dispute. LGBTQ plus organizations in the state of New York are reacting to the budget put forward by Governor Kathy Hochul. The budget redirects revenue generated by the federal 340B drug pricing program away from community health centers and into the state's coffers. The 340B program requires any pharmaceutical company that does business with Medicaid to provide deep discounts on prescription drugs to certain hospitals and clinics that serve low-income or needy populations. Those medical facilities can then get reimbursed for those drugs by health plans at higher rates and pocket the difference. Under the new budget, the state plans to transition Medicaid members to a new pharmacy benefit plan known as New York RX, a move that LGBTQ plus groups will say mean a loss of services for many of their members. The governor has been disinvited from attending the Buffalo Pride Parade, and many other groups, including New York City Pride, are considering the same. The Pride Center of Western New York and Evergreen Health said in a statement, quote, "We have informed Governor Hochul and her administration that their request to attend the Buffalo Pride Parade and Festival has been declined. We have not arrived at this decision lightly, and we are saddened to have made this stand." End quote.
Williams explains why.
4 prominent organizations representing healthcare rights for the LGBTQ community are telling New York City's Pride Parade organizers that they won't march alongside Governor Hochul. Housing Works, the Alliance for Positive Change, Callan Lord, and Harlem United sent a letter objecting to a possible loss in healthcare funding in Hochul's budget, and stating that if a change goes through, quote, "Governor Hochul's status as an LGBTQ ally is revoked. We would not participate in a parade that lifts up a governor who does not support all LGBTQ New Yorkers."
I'm going to say something at this table is I find this conversation very dangerous. I find attacking the New York governor who barely won the election in New York to a very right-wing Trump sympathizer candidate, and then trying to take her down in the state of New York. I understand. The problem is our health insurance programs are messed up, and the budget of New York is also a big challenge to undertake. And this is, instead of bringing the governor to the table and having a conversation, this is cancel culture at its worst, and I think disinviting the governor is a big mistake.
I guess what I would say is that it's incumbent on us not to only put political pressure on those that we consider our political enemies, but also our friends. It's not enough for politicians just to make commitments to our work. We also have to hold them accountable for fulfilling their promises and commitments to us. I don't know enough about the New York budget to say whether or not the governor has done that or not. I see your point, but I think it's always a good practice for us not only to hold our enemies accountable, but also our friends.
I'm curious to that observation, Ryan, because I agree with both observations that you've made. In this instance, what is your gut telling you? When certain group organizations are saying, here's our standard and we're revoking your LGBT allyship over this issue. The governor clearly is not anti-LGBT, right. and let's even agree with them for a moment. Do you think it rises to the level that it means we're withdrawing from the table and we revoke your allyship? Because that's what these 4 organizations have said.
No, what I would say to Jeff's point is we never want to take coming to the table and having an opportunity to work together, to educate, to learn out of the process. Anytime you close that conversation, that's when progress stops being made.
I ask you that question, and you all probably want to get into this. I ask this question because my criticism of Buffalo Pride is specifically that. I don't know enough about the finance of New York State and why the governor has done this. But at the end of the day, Buffalo Pride has made it clear you are now removed from our sphere and into no man's land. The alternative to Governor Hochul, it gets much, much worse. So while that removal seems to me anti of this idea that we keep the negotiation at the table. No, we don't even not only want you in the table, we don't want you in the room with us anymore, which is what Buffalo Pride is. It's a big living room on Main Street in Buffalo. And we have all collectively said, nope, we don't want you to participate, to the governor. And if they think that they have issues in New York with Governor Hochul, I invite them to come to Florida.
Yes.
And talk to Ron DeSantis.
Well, I mean, for me, I would think, isn't there like a middle zone, like for someone like her? Because I think we all agree that she's certainly somewhat of an ally for us. So, allies make mistakes sometimes. Like, talk about what she did and maybe we don't agree with it, but to just shut her down, I don't agree. I think that she's someone that we might want to use to our benefit.
I think disinviting is drastic.
Yeah.
And now you're going to push somebody back into a corner if you don't do what we want. That doesn't look good for our group at all. How is that helpful? It's not.
No, and I also think we should be reminded that, Buffalo just also was the center of terrible gun violence, and Governor Hochul is for sensible gun laws, which also affect the LGBTQ plus community. So again, I think we're putting people in boxes. It's just a really bad precedent.
And
to set.
unfortunately, we have a governor that doesn't care about any sort of sensible gun laws.
Absolutely.
Speaking of gun laws.
And even if this was going to be the conclusion of allies, to Ryan's point, we hold all of our allies to the fire and for them to commit. It's really difficult for me to believe that we would characterize Governor Hochul as not an ally of the LGBTQ community.
Sure.
It's very hard for me to accept that. One of the things that will come from this in terms of my comments or my understanding of this story is I must read much, much more about what's going on in New York because I don't know enough of how we could have come to this conclusion in our community, which I commit I'm going to do now.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and queer up entertainment. Kelsea Ballerini brings drag stars on stage at the CMT Awards. Country superstar Kelsea Ballerini hosted the 2023 CMT Music Awards in Austin, Texas, and brought iconic drag race stars on stage to protest anti-drag bills. Ballerini was joined by 4 drag race fan favorites: Season 3's Manila Luzon, Season 7's Kennedy Davenport, Season 12's Jan, and Season 13 Olivia Lux. for a fun, campy picket fence performance of her recent hit single, If You Go Down, I'm Going Down Too, complete with the queens dressed in retro Desperate Housewives eleganza, while accepting CMT's special Equal Play Award, which recognized artists that advocate for diversity in country music. Shania Twain used her time at the podium to demand that the country music industry close the gap and provide an equal workspace for all talent. Twain said, quote, I believe in an all-inclusive country music. Together, let's ensure all of our fellow artists get that equal play, regardless of gender, age, or race, end quote. Twain also gave a shout out to several rising country artists that will be joining her on tour this year, including Mickey Guyton, Anne Berland, who are Black, and Lily Rose, one of the few openly gay country artists signed to a major label in Nashville. This is fantastic because I love, well, you know, my background in music is all about following who's in the trend, who's in the top 10. This is what I spend on the weekends. Yes, I do spend a little bit of country once in a blue moon, if asked, and persuaded monetarily. I'm kidding. But
always give up that coin.
I was like, listen, man, there's a tip jar there. Hook it up. But I love that Shania Twain is at the forefront at the podium. This is fantastic. She's an icon. She's got a very, very big voice. Whether you like country music or not, you know who Shania Twain is.
Madonna's upcoming concert in Nashville.
It's going to be amazing. I'm telling you, so I think this is all in a positive force direction. And honestly, every side of the music industry needs to get a little bit more inclusive with all the changes and finally just allowing an artist to be an actual artist. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I love seeing that we're starting to get this wave of, celebrity, which is where a lot of these movements start to bring to the forefront how ridiculous these policies are that are coming against LGBTQ plus, people, drag queens, the trans community specifically. I was really happy to see Kelsea Ballerini. I got to spend a short 2 minutes with her on a Royal Caribbean cruise recently, and she sang in the karaoke bar and sang Shania Twain.
Awesome.
And
awesome. Jeff,
yes,
this is all hell.
Yeah, so she was performing on the ship, but she came into the karaoke bar when we were on board. And it was also amazing to see Kennedy Davenport, who was one of our gala hosts a couple years ago. Yeah. So a lot of great connections in this story.
Yeah, and I just want to say I think it's really important that CMT is doing this, that they did this on that venue because of the states that the artist and the audience represented by that demographic cover, especially putting Tennessee on blast right now. Ooh. But all of these, or so many of these artists, so much of their audience comes from the southern United States, where some of the most ridiculous anti-LGBTQ legislation is being considered right now.
Too.
Yes.
Ridiculous.
So it's so important.
Never used as an adjective.
No, it is. It's ridiculous. And it's important that this visibility and this representation be elevated on the stage.
Yeah, yeah.
One last thought. Over the weekend, I went to Diversity Honors, and I had the privilege again to interview Stuart Mill from the Harvey Milk Foundation. And one of the things that I asked Stuart was, if your uncle was alive, Harvey Milk, we're thrilled that you're here in South Florida and drawing attention to what's going on in Florida and in South Florida. I said, if your uncle was alive, what would Harvey Milk say to the LGBTQ community? And it was a powerful moment of his words that have echoed in my head over and over again since Diversity Honors, which is to not allow them to take the words away from you. And when they say X, you push back directly in counter to the observation that they are making. It rings with me because they gaslight. And on drag queens, they're gaslighting. Yeah. They're diverting, and they are gaslighting, and they are lying, and they are gaslighting. Here are the three tenets in that philosophy to push back on the issue about drag queens and the laws going on in Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. Number one, drag is not sexual. You cannot sell the idea that drag is sexual. That is gaslighting. We push back on that. Number two, drag queens are not groomers. They have nothing to do with children. And the fact that children are present to watch the entertainment process is gaslighting for you to try to suggest otherwise, that they are groomers. They are not. And third, With equal protection under the law, you better damn well make sure that you pass laws that apply to everyone equally. Yeah. And if you're going to do this to drag queen, point 1 and point 2, make sure you do it to Hooters. And make sure you do it to the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, because it's the exact same thing. Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders are drag queens. Hooters servers. We love Hooters. We love Hooters servers. They're drag queens. You are gaslighting, and Stuart Milk's words, I think, are correct. Push back on the lie. That's what's going on in drag.
Ooh, smartly
powerful.
put.
Yeah. Powerful. So let's queer up education. Nebraska school district sued after shutting down school paper with LGBTQ plus content. A school district in Nebraska is facing a lawsuit after a high school shut down its newspaper because students produced an LGBTQ plus edition. The lawsuit states that Grand Island Northwest Public Schools and its superintendent violated the First Amendment rights of students by axing the Viking saga, which had been running for 54 years, in May 2022. The student newspaper staff were made aware that the publication was being pulled 3 days after they published the June edition of the Viking Saga, which was a special LGBTQ plus print for Pride Month. On May 22nd, 2022, an email from a school employee said that the print edition had been axed because, quote, the school board and superintendent are unhappy with the last issue's editorial content, end quote. Oh my God. I mean, you know, I'm glad they're suing them, because isn't it about freedom of expression? Yes. And I mean, for them to do that, it was appropriate. It was Pride Month. Why wouldn't you, if you are a newspaper covering events and current events and stuff, why wouldn't you do an edition on LGBTQ+? Why wouldn't you do that? And I'm sure they have LGBTQ+ students in the school.
Easily.
It's really amazing that First Amendment gets really inconvenient when it's not the views that other people want to hear, which is the purpose of the First Amendment. That many of our flag waving people on the other side of the aisle love to wrap themselves in, but it's only when they hear the words that they want to hear. That is what the First Amendment is not about. They should probably read the Constitution. They have a copy of it.
Well, we got to make sure they know how to read first.
One related to this paper, we reported this the week that the paper was taken down, and that students couldn't do it anymore. It seems to me we get lost in that this is a free press and a free speech issue. It absolutely, clearly is a constitutional issue. That's what's going to go through the courts. But for me, that'll be adjudicated by a federal judge and maybe ultimately the Supreme Court on whether banning a newspaper in high school, does a high school and a group of high school students, does the First Amendment apply to them? I suspect a federal court, and even our supermajority Supreme Court is going to say, yeah, pretty much think it does. Yeah. So again, I think that if it gets that far, these people are on solid footing. But you know what's really disappointing, and what I really think is missed in this situation with that school, is what that school board, what that principal is telling their students. What they're teaching and telling those students by writing a newspaper that had a theme to embrace a Pride Month. Why couldn't that have happened in 1972 if they talked about a Black History Month in February? Why couldn't it be the exact same situation? Exactly. What that school board and that principal is doing, in my opinion, that is so egregious, is they're teaching them, don't be authentic. Don't speak up in defense against the oppressor. And don't be you. Hide yourself. Because if you do, we will ban you, or we will do worse. And I have seen multiple instances in history where that worked out very badly for us. Japan attacked the United States in World War II, and we responded to Japanese Americans in a terrible, terrible way. The Jews were attacked in 1939, and terrible consequences came up to that. And I'm sure there were many, many people afraid to speak up in their high school newspapers. The egregious thing here is the school board and the president of that school not standing behind the First Amendment of speech and press. And this is what you're teaching your students. Very sad to me in that school system.
I think you make a really good point, and I think it speaks to the broader issue that's going on with Don't Say Gay here in Florida and other anti-LGBT legislation that are going through school boards and also state legislatures, impacting education, and it's actually nefarious. It is not only the erasure of us as LGBTQ people, but also the erasure of our past, our struggles from the past, and also our current struggles. And there's a purpose behind it. It's to create an uninformed and unaware populace that is not able to identify when oppression is occurring against LGBTQ people because they don't recognize it from the past. They can't identify those patterns as it applies to other groups like African Americans, Black Americans, the Jews. All of this is they're recycling the same sort of form of same tropes and same forms of oppression that have been used in the past, and they're just trying to make sure that the general public isn't aware or doesn't catch on to what is happening.
Yeah, I remember in school in the 70s, we didn't learn anything about slavery. Yeah. They just kind of brushed right over it, and let alone LGBTQ. So the same thing is it's repeating itself here in this state with the banning of the books.
That's exactly why some very smart protester bought a fruit pie and pushed it in the face of Anita Bryant. That was the value of that moment, because the symbolism of something is simple. I'm not advocating doing that, by the way. I'm not advocating any kind of violent protest. But the value of that symbol was, wait, we've had enough of this. Now we're going to talk in a completely different way. And maybe that's really where we've got to at this point. If one more person says to me, and I know y'all will 100 times this year, we should get out and vote. Yes, we already know that. What's next?
And I just wanted to say too, real quick, it's important for community, whether the laws are banning whatever, to continue to talk. Because I learned about slavery from community and what really went down. Like school wasn't teaching it, the teacher wasn't teaching.
What state did you grow up in?
In Philadelphia.
You grew up in Philly?
I grew up in Philly.
Okay, this is very interesting. And in what years were you in elementary school during the...
Don't tell me.
You have a birthday coming up. Just give it up.
But in the 70s.
In the 70s.
Yeah,
okay.
I
find this very interesting because I grew up in your neighboring state. I grew up in New Jersey. And I was going to school in the late 70s, early 80s, and we were forced to learn every single little thing about slavery.
Wow.
I mean, it was very...
Sarasota County.
We were very heavily educated.
Isn't that...
That's why I'm wondering, I'm like, how are we in neighboring states? And you didn't get that. That's wild.
Y'all should have visited the
subject to interpretation, too.
All right, well, let's talk about some non-depressing news. Next, let's queer up entertainment. Doctor Who gets even more queer as the Doctor-to-be joined by Jinkx Monsoon. Jinkx Monsoon, winner of the 5th season of RuPaul's Drag Race and the 7th season of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, has been added to the cast of the BBC's long-running and immensely popular Doctor Who series. Jinkx is said to be playing a major but as of yet undisclosed role. Showrunner Russell T. Davies said, quote, "In a galaxy of comets and supernovas, here comes the biggest star of all. Jinkx Monsoon is on a collision course with the TARDIS, and Doctor Who will never be the same again." End quote. Doctor Who returns in November 2023 with 3 special episodes, with David Tennant as the 14th Doctor to coincide with the 60th anniversary. Tennant and Catherine Tate are reprising their roles for the show's 60th anniversary. And the BBC has confirmed that they will appear in 3 special episodes, set to air in November this year. The next Doctor, played by sex education star Ncuti Gatwa, will take control of the TARDIS after Tennant with his first episode airing over the festive period.
The actress, singer, and two-time Drag Race winner said, "I'm honored, thrilled, and utterly excited to join Doctor Who. Russell T. Davies is a visionary and a brilliant writer. I can't wait to get into the weeds with him and the crew. I hope there's room in the TARDIS for my luggage."
Well, I don't know about you all, but I am a tremendous Jinkx Monsoon fan. So first of all, congratulations, Jinkx. You're amazing. Keep killing it. But man, what an incredible opportunity for representation and visibility on an institution like Doctor Who that's been on the air for 60 years, that is literally elevating Jinkx to generations of fans of the Doctor Who series.
You know, hilarious on Ryan. 60 years of history of Doctor Who, and who he's excited about is Jinkx Monsoon. It's hilarious. Right.
I might actually watch Doctor Who now.
Gotta love it.
Well, it is exciting to see representation, of course, in any format. But the idea that we're now seeing, these casting that are not stunts, around that it's a drag queen on the show, but just cast as characters, is again just that arc of now, kind of going from, we want to say like the Will and Grace sitcom versus to that now we have LGBTQ characters that are woven into the fabric of storylines, and their sexuality may or may not have anything to do with it. And, I hope Jinkx Monsoon is just another part of that storyline.
And then I also think, too, it's important that these kind of things happen, especially based on what's going on now, because it's almost like a slap in the face to Tennessee and the different states that are, you know what I mean? When, when you're casting a drag queen for something or a trans person for something.
I'm going to get it from so many people. I'm an uber Doctor Who fan. I have watched every episode of Doctor Who in the last 25 years.
Not all 60 years?
There we go. See, I knew right out of the gate.
And I have a question, though. Yeah. Didn't they recently, there was a whole thing with the wording being revamped, with some of the wording that used to be used that would now be offensive?
Oh, was that Star Trek? Oh.
Yeah, no. In terms of reference, and lots more, an increased LGBT integration, including LGBT Doctor Who.
So this is putting their mouth where their money is. Like
exactly. Let me tell you one of the reasons why this story is interesting to me. Doctor Who, literally, when we said, Ryan mentions it, 60 years. Doctor Who's been on the air 60 years. Think about that.
Including
Longer
General
than I've been
Hospital.
alive.
Wow.
Longer than General Hospital, before the Stonewall riots.
Celebrating the
Yeah.
This has been on the air. Literally, Doctor Who has documented British society over the last 60 years. And that includes embracement of trans character, LGBT characters, but everything that goes on in the world. So this is really a really big deal. The second thing that I think is a really big deal about it, and I agree with Ryan about Jinkx and her involvement in Doctor Who, is this is a person that once upon a time only did so-so in the season. It did well, but not absolutely fantastic in the season that was on, and is a winner's story. Keep at it, keep at it, keep at it, goes on. And arguably, everyone generally agrees that consider themselves experts that All-Star 7 was the best series ever in the implementation of all the series of RuPaul Drag Race, and Jinkx wins it.
Wow.
Comes back to win it. And then Jinkx goes on to all kinds of other projects, including going to Chicago and starring on Broadway. And now this announcement with BBC. This is an indication of our talent in our community escalating in a way that 20 years ago was impossible. That's what this announcement is, impossible. And one of the things that I think is really important about this is one of the top demographics that watch the BBC is children under 18 years old. Okay. And a drag queen is going to star in it, which likely could be considered the intent violation of being illegal in Tennessee and soon to be in Texas and maybe in Florida. And Jinkx Monsoon is going to be on television in front of children in America going, what are these people talking about?
Yeah.
And Jinkx Monsoon gets to represent it on a program of such historic significance as Doctor Who. That's why this story is fabulous.
Yeah, well, I also want to say to Jinkx Monsoon, you know, you were on a reality star and maybe someday you can be president.
Yes.
Next up, check out what will be appearing this week in South Florida Gay News.
This week on South Florida Gay News. This is South Florida Gay News on Queer News Tonight. I'm reporter John Hayden. In this week's edition, Democratic leaders arrested in Tallahassee. State Party Chair Nikki Fried and Senate Minority Leader Lauren Book were arrested at a peaceful protest over passage of Florida's proposed 6-week abortion ban. Also, while governments try to shove trans back in the closet, local activists were out and proud at the Trans Day of Visibility in Wilton Manors. And World AIDS Museum expands its educational footprint as Executive Director Terry Dyer heads to Illinois to share his experiences in a special symposium. I'm John Hayden. These stories and more on stands and always updated at southfloridagaynews.com.
Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious live broadcast in the world every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern.
Well, Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and radical conservatives have suggested that the LGBTQ plus community has a secret plan, and we guess it's probably for world domination. And we're going to tell you all about it in our segment called The Gay Agenda.
In The Gay Agenda, we queer up drag culture. Small Town Drag Story Hour event targeted by anti-LGBTQ plus business owners and Proud Boys.
We're queer! Get used to it! We're here! We're queer! Get used to it! Male and female! He created! That's it! Anything else is an abomination! Protect our children! Come on! Protect our children!
The small town of Montgomery, New York was thrown into chaos this weekend as the Montgomery Book Exchange hosted a drag queen story hour featuring drag performer Cookie Dough. Todd DeGroat, the owner of Pop's Trophies in the town, was vocally against the event and made numerous posts on social media disparaging the event and attempting to portray Cookie as a predator. Gregory Kevin Mullen II of Roscoe, New York, who recently gained social media notoriety after complaining about being roughed up by drag queens at a protest in New York City, also appeared with several other members of the Proud Boys in tow. Despite the protests, organizers of the event say that everyone in attendance enjoyed themselves thanks to the help of the Montgomery Police Department and other allies.
In The Gay Agenda, we queer up trans rights. Michael Bublé calls out right-wing attacks on trans. Grammy Award-winning Michael Bublé, best known for his hit festive album Christmas, addressed the rising anti-LGBTQ+ rhetoric in a new interview with The Guardian. In the interview, he said, quote, "I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician, but I see all these people talking about the LGBTQ+ community, and we've got bigger problems. Those are not problems. Just accept it. How does it change your life? Just love people. Mental health is a big issue in places like America. Gun control is a big issue. Identify how you want to identify, and God bless you." End quote. Bublé credits his attitude to the LGBTQ+ community to his two gay uncles, progressive parents, and working in the music industry where he is surrounded by the gay community.
In the gay agenda, we queer up South Florida and Florida. Teen releases independent film in Florida documenting life being trans. Carries Mullen, a Florida teenager, has documented how it feels to be young and transgender for a film set to debut at a festival as transgender people around the world celebrated visibility this past Friday, and lawmakers across the country look to restrict their rights and care. Mullins, 19, who is gender nonconforming and uses she and they pronouns, said their experience inspired conversation with community members for the documentary, quote, "You're Loved." The film, directed by and produced by Mullins, premiered at the Tampa Bay Transgender Film Festival this past Friday on Transgender Day of Visibility. Mullins said, quote, "That's a big part of what the festival is, a big part the Tampa Bay Transgender Film Festival is. Look at us."
In the gay agenda, we queer up LGBTQ+ civil rights. Ricky Martin presented Bad Bunny with the GLAAD Vanguard Award.
Lo primero que quiero es dar gracias a GLAAD por este reconocimiento. Gracias a toda la comunidad LGBTQ por abrazarme, por quererme de la manera que lo hacen y por inspirarme también.
Bad Bunny was awarded the GLAAD Vanguard Award at the 2023 GLAAD Media Awards on Thursday, March 30th in Los Angeles. The Puerto Rican hitmaker received the distinguished honor presented by fellow superstar Ricky Martin that recognizes his advocacy and allyship for the LGBTQ+ community. Bad Bunny, who dressed in drag for his 2020 music video and last year kissed a man on stage during his World's Hottest tour, accepted the award, saying in Spanish, quote, "Thank you to the LGBTQ community for embracing me, for loving me the way you do, and for inspiring me too. I believe that when you have a good heart and you give love, that's what you receive back. And that's what I've wanted to do all this time with my music, with what I represent, with my space, with my concerts, with my shows, with all I do, that's all I want to do, give and receive love." That is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ+ news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these type of LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including DJ Nena, Jeff Oliverio, Rajee Narinesingh, and Ryan Hurst. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. But before we end our broadcast, we have one final story. Next, let's queer up the big interview. Harvey Milk Medal is awarded to Nicole M. Ramirez in drag with sharp words for Governor Ron DeSantis. Stewart Milk and the Harvey Milk Foundation presented the prestigious Harvey Milk Medal to one of America's Lions of LGBTQ+ advocacy at this week's Diversity Honors. The event was held at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood as a benefit for the Pride Center of Equality Park. Ramirez has a record of 50 years of activism, including working with Harvey Milk in the 1970s. She is Queen Mother of the International Court System, one of the world's most important drag-inspired organizations that launched in the early 1960s. The first LGBTQ+ person to ever run for public office in the United States was a member of the International Court System. While at Diversity Honors, I had an exclusive interview with Ramirez of the importance of the Harvey Milk Honor, what is happening to the LGBTQ+ community, and especially to the drag community at the hands of Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. Nicole M. Ramirez missed no opportunity to call out Florida and the attacks on our LGBTQ+ community.
Well, we're at the Harvey Milk Foundation Pride Center of Equality Park here at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino and Hotel. And I have a legendary guest with us tonight at Diversity Honors. And of course, that's Nicole Murray Ramirez. Nicole is the recipient of the Harvey Milk Medal. And I did an interview with you last week, which was amazing. This is an iconic voice in LGBT activism. And welcome here to Diversity Honors.
Oh, it's wonderful to be in Miami. No, in Florida.
Fort
See,
Lauderdale.
I travel so I don't know. But I must say, this weather's not good for a drag queen. So if your viewers see me turn into Freddy Krueger with my makeup, it's just the humidity.
You must watch the interview with Nicole. 50 years of advocacy, including working with Harvey Milk. Tell us about when you got the notice that you were winning the Harvey Milk Medal. What was your reaction to it?
Well, to be very honest, I thought of Harvey. I thought he's probably in heaven laughing and saying, "Get it, girlfriend." Harvey Milk had the greatest sense of humor. And he loved drag queens because when he ran, the gay establishment was against him. But the drag queens and the lead and the bar people, we all supported him, you know.
And now explain to me the international court system. I've been to many of the events, but explain to me, you have a very cherished and important title in international court.
Well, the international court system, as I said, is like the LGBTQ Shriners or Elks, except we don't drive the little cars, but we wear clowns.
Or wear the clown outfit.
Yeah. So they were it was established in 1961 when being gay was illegal, and it was founded by a Latino World War II veteran, and in 1961 became the first openly gay candidate to run for public office, paving the way for Harvey Milk and Senator Tammy Baldwin and everyone that has now gotten elected.
And I happen to know I'm sitting in royalty because your title is
the Queen Mother of the Americas, United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Yes.
It's kind of, people think it's like Queen Elizabeth, God bless her. It was Queen Elizabeth's mother. That was Queen Mother.
Now, for all of the RuPaul's Drag Race fans, RuPaul has talked about the international court system so much in respect of its origination and founding. And so Nicole has the ability as a city and county commissioner in San Diego, but more importantly, as Queen Mother of the International Court, to bestow royal office.
And look.
And tonight,
I proclaimed the Grand Duke of Florida, of the Americas, excuse me.
Exactly.
So you see, he's now a Grand Duke for 3 nations, United States, Canada, Mexico.
Thank you. I'm very excited, and I'm going to rule in benevolence.
Yes. And make sure your crown is never bigger than mine.
Oh, child, that could not be true.
Oh.
Nicole, here tonight with such a huge crowd to represent and show love to you. One of the things that's interesting to me is you're in drag tonight, and you know what's going on here in Florida in drag. Any thoughts about what you're watching going on in Florida?
Here's what, as I've been doing more investigating about what the important role that drag has played in the history of the United States, because people forget that during World War II and I, in fact, since the 1800s, drag shows on military bases has happened. And Ronald Reagan appeared in drag. President Roosevelt actually saw a drag show on a military base and raved about it. You know, so it's a wonderful art, and it is a vehicle that has raised millions of dollars throughout since the 1960s for all kinds of causes, especially during AIDS, when the only people during AIDS, as we all know, the dark years, I call them, no one would help us. I mean, there were no AIDS walks or in fact,
there was no RuPaul's Drag Race.
No, and when I founded one of our AIDS funds, people actually said, "Can I just do the initials?" They weren't even afraid to put AIDS on their checkbooks. But we were constantly doing drag queens, but not only us, the leather community, and of course the unsung heroes, the women's community that did so much and took care of us.
Yeah. To show you, I again encourage you, watch the interview that Nicole has given us. It literally is a history lesson on the history of political advocacy of the LGBTQ community over the last 50 years. I was very excited that you were coming and you were going to be in drag tonight. And
I'm sweating like a whore in church.
Exactly. and Nicole, very excited to be here in South Florida. She said you're supposed to, like they did in '76 with Anita Bryant, bring pies. And you brought some pies tonight for Governor Ron DeSantis.
Well, actually, I'm giving remarks. You'll have to listen to my remarks. I have a message for him from the other states in America.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, for Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to know this. The Imperial Court of Florida this afternoon had a bite-throwing contest, and they raised $2,500 for ACLU Florida. We're presenting a check to Equality Florida from the court system.
Awesome.
You're not alone.
No.
I mean, you have LGBTQ people
everywhere
across the nation
thinking about Florida,
backing you up and supporting you.
That's wonderful news.
I call your governor the new Joe McCarthy of America.
1952.
Yeah,
right, exactly. McCarthyism. Well, we're here at Diversity Honors. Nicole Murray Ramirez is getting ready to accept the Harvey Milk Medal. Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you, Grand Duke, and make sure your staff now calls you Your Royal Highness.
You heard.
You got it?
You must
Royal Highness.
Royal Highness.
And that would to get you on a bus, but you got to pay for it.
We're at Diversity Honors.
Thank you.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ